Welcome back to another video from Upstart Epoxy, folks. In today's video, we're going to go over the dangers of over pouring tabletop epoxy, pouring it too deep. Tabletop epoxy is a 1-to-1 ratio and it's meant to be poured at no more than 1/8 of an inch. Can you get away with a little bit more on that? Of course you can. But you're pushing the lines if you take it to 1/2 inch or even higher than that, folks. So on this one, we're gonna go about a good 1.5 inches and we're gonna pour it that deep and we're gonna show you what happens. This is kind of new for us because we've never poured this much tabletop epoxy into a silicone mold. So we gotta be very careful. But the most important thing, folks, that we wanna make sure we do is that we have our safety precautions. I have my glasses and I'm gonna double mask for this one. I have this mask and then I have my carbon filtered mask that I'm gonna throw on top of this just to make sure. Because the fumes that come from this epoxy are pretty bad. They stink. They can, the epoxy itself, when it heats up, you gotta be very careful because it could burn the surface you're on. I've seen makers leave tabletop epoxy that's poured up to like 2 inches, or they leave too much in their mixing cups like that. It burns a hole in the cup. It's just really dangerous. So you gotta really know what you're doing, folks. So we're gonna shoot this video today to show you what happens when you do that. Let's get ready to go, shall we? I'm not gonna double mask until I absolutely need to. And that's when this starts getting super hot. So we're gonna go 1 to run, and we're gonna fill this up all the way. So let's go. I like to always pour my hardener first because the hardener kind of makes it, the viscosity, a lot easier. So let's go here. Second pour. I didn't even warm this epoxy up, but it's so warm where we're at right now. Look at that. Didn't even phase it. I didn't even need to warm it up. And that's a good thing. Okay, here we go. I over poured a little bit because I over poured a little bit on the first one. So let's get those all wrapped up. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a little color in here just so we can see the actual reaction that occurs when the tabletop epoxy starts to heat up. And that's what's gonna happen, folks. That exothermic reaction that occurs with part A and part B, those two parts, those two components, when they start to work together and blend in and do their thing, we're forcing them to do that when we over pour what it's meant to be poured at, the level it's meant to be poured at. So this is gonna get super, super hot and it's gonna cure super, super fast. Normally it takes tabletop about 24 hours to cure to the touch and to start working with it. But you're gonna see it's gonna cure a lot faster than that, folks. Let's get this all mixed up. And you're gonna see some really cool patterns that it makes as it's heating up and stuff. I'm curious to see if it smokes. I'm thinking it will, because I've never used it. Every time that that's happened, it's been like in a wood form or an HDPE form. And that was when I first started messing with epoxy and stuff. Sometimes you gotta learn by trial and error, or like they say, you learn the hard way. So, just mix this a little bit more just to make sure. Normally a lot of people, when they're using tabletop epoxy, they like to mix the epoxy by itself first before they put the pigment, just to see that the cloudy effect has gone away. But you can do it that way, or you can put your pigment in like we did, and if you mix it for a good 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you know that will accomplish itself. So either way, whatever you feel more comfortable with doing, it's up to you, folks. All right, I think we're ready. Let's go ahead and put the drill here. I'm gonna go ahead and hold this little piece of wood down for now. I have a little weight here that I got that I'll put on top of it to keep it down. So let's pour all of this in here. Okay, and I wanted to leave a little excess in the bucket to show you what happens in the mixing cup. when you leave it in there. So, all is good for now. It's looking good. It's gonna do its thing. But up here's our little weight that we're gonna put on this wood so it doesn't float off. But we're just here to see now how long it takes for it to start curing. And let's see if it smokes. Let's see what it does. Go ahead and poke and prod it just to see what's going on. Still hasn't really started just yet. Trust me, it will. And you know what I've noticed when that starts happening is, it seems like these exterior parts here, these exterior edges, start to go in like really rapidly. Let's see if that happens again. Okay folks, we're about 7 minutes in, and see how I told you these bubbles are starting to form from the exterior portion of the mold here, and they're starting to go in, they're starting to move in like that. So that tells me that that exothermic reaction that occurs with epoxy, that it's starting to, the wheels are starting to turn. It's starting to get going, it's starting to move. And what I'll do is I'm gonna go ahead and pop those bubbles with the heat gun and see what that does. Oh yeah, I can tell the epoxy's getting a little thicker just by doing that, I could tell. So normally what happens when this does this is if you go 2 inches thick with tabletop epoxy, or even like 1.5 inches thick, 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, it's gonna crack. Your epoxy is going to crack, or it's gonna get, you're gonna get a lot of bubbles like around the edges here. Like if you're laying it with wood, if you have wood in your epoxy like that, you'll get a lot of bubbles because it's trying to force the air prematurely. And those bubbles don't pop in time. It cures before they can pop, and you're stuck with a bunch of bubbles left there like that. And eventually, once it gets too hot and starts to cool down, it will crack. I have noticed that. But look at it again. You can see that the inside is starting to come in. Look at that, how it's lighter on the outside here, and the inside's a little bit darker. So the bubbles, you see, these are the bubbles. I just hit them with the air gun, or the hot gun, and heat gun, and they are still coming. So there's so many bubbles that are in there that they're not gonna be able to be released in time because it's gonna cure on them. Our bucket is doing okay too. Let's check this. Oh, it's getting a little thicker. A little thicker. Let's move it around and see what happens. Let's see. And usually I've noticed when this occurs like this, you get kind of like a vertebraic, or like I don't know, a really weird pattern in the resin, the way that it forms. Like a lot of people like to swirl their boards and stuff. Well, this gives off a really cool natural effect on the resin. That's kind of I don't know. I've seen a lot of it, like I said, like a vertebrae. A lot of it's kind of like leopard print. I don't know. It's kind of funky. I'm hoping that it does that so that you guys can see. Where I'm gonna double mask because I haven't seen any smoke come. And let me fill this container here. I don't feel too much heat yet on the container itself. Let's see on this. I don't really feel it on this either. So once I start feeling heat on this container, I know that it's going into overdrive. And at that time, I will put on the secondary mask and the first mask. I don't really need it just yet. All right, folks, we're about 10 minutes in. And now you can see that that square has completely vanished. It's gone. So it's all come from the outer edges like this, and it's all gone right into the middle and eaten up that little square that was there. The mixing container is starting to get a little warm, and look at all the bubbles it's forcing out, folks. Remember I told you about all the bubbles that'll be released, but they won't be able to pop because it's gonna cure right on them. So let's give it a few more minutes and see what happens. Okay, folks, in our mixing cup, we're starting to get that cellular effect I was telling you about as it cures. Now, it's super, super hot to the touch, the cup itself on the outer side where the epoxy is. So it's still liquid state for now. I haven't started to feel any parts of the epoxy hardening up. So usually it starts here in the middle, so where it'll start to harden, and then it'll get like jelly. So when we get to that stage, we'll show you what it's like. Okay, folks, now in our silicone mold, it looks like this is starting to do some formation. So there's some activity going on here. That reaction between the two is coming. I can start to smell it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put on my secondary mask. I can't see the smoke yet, but I can definitely smell that horrible little smell. And if you'll notice, those are really, really getting to start their formation. And when that happens, that's a good sign that it's really starting to cure, folks. So I can totally smell it now. So if you'll see here, it's still liquidy, but these little patterns that are forming are a good way to let you know that it's curing. And look, I started to see a little bit of smoke here. Here we go, folks. Check this out. Look how hard that is. Underneath, you still have the liquid state underneath, look. But look at all of that has already solidified, folks. Check it out. So this baby's almost there. Oh boy, here comes the smoke. Always got to have your protective nosewear and eyewear, folks. So we put some from the bottom, and this guy looks like he's almost there. He's coming, but when these little celluloids, or whatever you want to call them, start to form, that's a good way to know. We're just bringing some of this, and we're just kind of having fun with this now, just to see where this takes us. But look at that big hockey puck style piece of epoxy just floating in there. See what they're up? It's getting a little jelly. Look, it's getting kind of jelly-like. You'll see that. Look, kind of gelatinous. Check it out. Oh yeah, see, it's gonna go now. Another cool thing that I've seen people do is they'll use an air gun at this point in time, and you can get some really cool high pitches and low pitches, some grades in your epoxy. Oh, here we go. We got this guy. Puncture. Ooh, that was cool. Check this out. Oh, wow, folks. This is super cool. Oh yeah, let's just mess with this and see what it does. It's not smoking too bad, but it's like a little piece of epoxy toast. Check it out. Oh, look, you got some rises here. The underside is still not cured, but this baby's in the process, getting some smoke. Uh-oh, we got solidification here, folks. Look at that. It's not even budging now. That sucker is solidified. And it's still a little bit of jelly, but let's see what's going on over here. Okay, there's still some underneath there. Oh, wow, look at that cool. Oh, yeah. Ooh, all right. Well, and there you have it, folks. There's minimal smoke, and that's a good thing. I'm wondering if it's because of the silicone mold, and even in this cup. I mean, I've left tabletop epoxy in there before in like smaller mixing cups, and man, it smokes like a chimney. But in this one, for whatever reason, this is a good brand or a good quality, because there was very minimal smoke, and it didn't. It got warm, but it's not too bad. It didn't melt this plastic under here, but to the touch, whew, that's pretty darn hot. But look at these little rises and stuff that we got in the epoxy. Okay, here we go. Here's some smoke coming out of here now, a little bit. Still not to the level that I've ever seen it before, but that's a good thing, I guess. And this guy he's ready. Oh, the smoke's coming from here. Oh yeah, look, folks, check that out. This baby's gonna cure any second now. I'm gonna take this weight off. I don't think that's relevant anymore. And I'm just gonna leave this be, and let's see if we can get it to cure like this. This guy is just totally done. This guy's smoking away. We've opened up some windows here in the shop. We have our ventilation on. And we're just making sure we don't start a fire. Oh yeah, totally getting harder now. Folks, we're taking the risk with this so that you don't have to. We don't want you getting curious, not knowing what you're doing, messing around with this, or just inadvertently pouring too much, not knowing, maybe confusing two different epoxies like the deep pour and the tabletop, that's a no-no. So we're here today, folks, to show you what can happen if you over pour tabletop epoxy from Upstart Epoxy, or any epoxy for that matter. What you want to do is make sure that you always use this the way it's recommended, folks. The way it's recommended on the labels and to the degree that it's meant to be poured. Ideally, tabletop epoxy is for flood coats, maybe smaller coats of color, trinkets, charms, stuff like that. That's the best way to use tabletop epoxy. If you're gonna use it like for river tables or charcuterie boards and stuff like that, you're gonna have to pour it a layer at a time, folks, I'm telling you. Maybe if you can get away with a 1/16 of an inch and 5 layers of that to equal whatever depth you wanna get or however many it's gonna take. But if you're gonna do it like that, this is why you don't do that, folks. You don't over pour tabletop epoxy. You saw how this is. This is extremely hot to the touch. Super hot to the touch. And look at how hot it got. It bubbled up over here and cured while it was bubbling, folks. This is why we took the time to show you folks what will happen if you do this, if you over pour your tabletop epoxy. So take it from us. It's not fun. It's a lot of smoke. It's a lot of horrible smell because this stuff really stinks. And whenever you're working with any kind of epoxy, it's always imperative that you have your protective wear, folks, whether your glasses, your mask. I would actually recommend one of the other masks that have the big carbon filters. I didn't have those. My dog chewed it up. So I had to go with my backup. But this is the reason, folks, that you stick to the manufacturer's recommendations. Oh, that is super hot. Dang. And so is that. Yeah, let's just leave those. Yeah, look, it's starting to burn the plastic on the bottom here. Look how that's getting. I'm gonna move that. I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in another cup here, just to be safe, because it's starting to burn that. And as for the silicone, it doesn't look like it's doing too much damage to it. Yeah, no. Silicone's pretty impervious and pretty tough. Okay, folks, we're back. It's been a while. We've given it about 30 minutes to cool down, and it's all nice and cool. So we're gonna go ahead and look. Oh God, look how easy that comes off. We're gonna go ahead and take these out. But look at, folks, look at how that reacts. Look at how it didn't bond there because it was forced. We put it into a speed cure state, and look at how there was just so much air and gaps and pockets like that. It just didn't. It almost failed, but it's still solidified, hard as a rock. Can't hear it because I'm a dummy. Anyways, so it did stick to the wood though. Look, I can't pull that wood out for nothing. So it did grab onto that wood and it latched onto that. So that's one thing. But we were able to get these little mountains and these little rises like that, which, I mean, some people might like, and that's kind of cool, but still wouldn't recommend it, folks. This one, I went ahead and I cut some slits in here just to peel it off. Go ahead and rip this guy out here, and we're left with, just like I said in there, a little puck, a hockey style puck. This one looks like it actually solidified really good, unlike this one. For whatever reason, it took the form and the shape of the cup to the T. Didn't come out very pretty on top, but we could have made it if we wanted to. But super solid and solidified. Totally force cured, folks. So in today's video, we showed you the hazards of over pouring 1-to-1 tabletop epoxy from Upstart Epoxy. You don't want to do it. You saw how it smoked. You saw how it gave off horrible smelling fumes. We saw how it could be hazardous to your health. You don't want to do it. So always remember, folks, make sure your measurements are on point. It's a 1-to-1 ratio meant to be poured at 1/8 of an inch thick. If you want to go over a little bit, I'm not telling you not to, but if you're going to go over any more than, say, 1/16 of an inch, you might have to deal with this, folks. These are super solid, and they're totally cured way too fast, and it's just dangerous. You could cause a fire. There's a lot of things that go into this, folks. That's why we made this video, to show you what happens and why you shouldn't do that. So this has been Steve with Upstart. We hope you learned something from this video. If you did, or if you have any questions, drop them down below in the comments. If you haven't subscribed already, sheesh, come on, subscribe, folks. We'll make the best videos we can for you guys with the most information that we can provide for you, okay? So, like I said, this has been Steve with Upstart Epoxy. We'll see you next time.